Ciao. Give it another minute or two. It's just where people will come in. So George can look me up. We'll give it just one more minute. Noted. Hey, everybody. We have a pretty light agenda, so I'll just get through it and probably early. On the agenda, I have all the updates. The first is we've merged the charter for the community support working group. As promised last time, just a few weeks ago, I'll be sending out an email to remind people, but you can subscribe by just, sort of like sending an email to the subscribe list. We'll be trying to hold a kickoff within the next few weeks. A few folks from participating from Meta, a few other companies in the TSC. The goal will be to just, sort of like start measuring and figuring out ways to improve the developer experience. in the community. Prioritizing in particular PRs, GitHub issues, that sort of thing. Next up, some minor changes, actually not minor, non-trivial changes to our committer rules in the Presto DB/Presto repo. These have been approved by the TSC and are pretty much good to go. Let's see. Hello, whoever just joined. So the new committer rules are essentially as follows. We have added a code owners file to the Presto DB repo. The code owners file allows you to specify who has the ability to merge a PR. So what's changing is before we would consider that committers had the ability to merge code. So you could get one or more different people who would approve the code, and then the committer basically would just come and click the merge button. What's different in this model is now we allow for people to still continue to approve code, but you must obtain an approval also from a Presto committer. And after the approval has been completed, then anyone can merge the code. So, practically this is the same. You still require an approval from a committer. But what this allows you to do is you can leverage the code owners functionality in GitHub to supply more granular rules. Initially, the rules are exactly as they were. So essentially, a Presto DB, someone who's in the Presto DB committers group needs to approve any file in the repository. But in the future, like you could imagine, differences where, for example, one particular connector or submodule within the Presto DB repo could have a dedicated code owner. Someone who's, for an example, some sort of expert in the geospatial functions might have a dedicated, committer role, for these sorts of library functions. Libraries, plugins, connectors are all really great candidates for a dedicated code owner, where the Presto DB committers actually may be less qualified than whoever originally contributed that code. So that was the first part of that change, which is introduce code owners. Pull requests now are leveraging code owners functionality. So for example, if we just go through a random pull request, we'll see that we'll see this line right here. Sergey here did not manually request this because he's basically touching files that go to the default code owners group. This GitHub group basically notifies GitHub will then notify whoever's in this GitHub group, the committers group, for a review, and that review will be required. And we can see that here. We see the little shield with the key. This means that approval is required to merge the PR. And then as a follow-up, we've also changed the contributing.md documentation to reflect this. So before we would say that whoever's in this wiki group needs to approve the code. Now we say that whoever's in the code owners file has to approve, has to approve that code. So for now, practically, there's no difference, but in the future, like there could be differences for things like different submodules and other repositories within the Presto DB/Presto GitHub repo.
I'd like to make a comment about this, and I know that this is probably already a settled consensus, but experience from the Apache world is that giving slightly more expansive permissions is a really good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is that it sucks people in. and it builds community. And people are pretty good about doing what they know rather than what they can or allowed to do.
Yeah, and like to be clear, the intent is not to necessarily restrict. And I think I definitely don't disagree with you. But I also do think that it will take time to move everyone's way of thinking to the way that you're describing.
Yeah,
And
yeah, no
so,
doubt, no doubt.
it's kind of like a step in that direction, with like basically the end goal, as you're saying. The way that I
Yeah,
see it, though, there's some things that need to change. So number one is the way that we release needs to be a little bit more durable to problems. So, essentially, like I think that we need to get into a mode where, like we're more fearlessly rolling back, more aggressively rolling back, and we have better open source release infrastructure, so that people can do this in a self-service way. And unfortunately, we're just not there yet. Given the history of Presto, a lot of that infrastructure is still within Meta. We would love to put that out in the open, but it will take time. And so I think like that's the first one. And the second, I think like blocker for that is just sort of, moving to that way of thinking.
yeah.
And we need to get consensus on that. And that I think it'll take time, but I think we will get there.
And that is the best argument possible for a limited set of people, and that is a limited set of people who have the keys to sign releases.
Exactly.
But that isn't where community gets built anyway. It gets built in this, can you review, can you help, can you comment, can you kibitz? Oh, now can you step up a little bit more? That sort of thing.
Yep. Totally agree.
And frankly, the thin agenda here is essential.
Yep. Any other comments on this, or move on?
Last comment is it looks like it's really well done. Not that you need my approval.
The code owner's functionality, or the
Yeah, I mean, it
is
looks like
everything
it cleanly fits into how the world works, how GitHub works, how Git works, how the community already thinks of itself. And that's good.
Great. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to bring up, moving on from changes to the committer rules, is the changes. It's a minor change to the TSC charter. Shouldn't have that much impact, but essentially, like the TSC charter used to have this kind of like provision: if there's not a certain amount of companies in the TSC, then each company gets one vote. Since that time, like this was, I think, done in a time when some of the, rules around how do you become a member of the TSC were underspecified, and like the difference between committer and TSC member wasn't very well specified. Now we've moved to a model where you basically get voted into the TSC, and there's a limit. Once your term limit ends, you either run for election again or choose not to. There's kind of like a general consensus that this provision is confusing and unnecessary. So it's really just removing this provision where if you have less than 6 members of the TSC, each company that the member is a part of counts as one vote. Just removing that and making it sort of like an absolute majority, typically like a lazy consensus vote among TSC members. The change to lazy consensus happened a few months earlier, and what we're talking about now is just sort of like making it so that whenever something does come to a vote, It's just, sort of like absolute majority of whoever happens to show up to the vote. This is being reviewed by Linux Foundation Legal, but sort of like we should get approval from, I think, everyone in the TSC. And that's the change to the related company provision in the TSC charter. So these are the agenda items that, sort of like I had. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to bring up at the meeting today? One other quick update is the 272 release has been, quite delayed. I did want to give an update on that. We did end up cutting a 272.1 release where one change to the Hive connector ended up causing problems for other connectors that end up using that change. And we ended up sort of like just pushing with 272.1. Which moves that to the 273 release, just to get that release out the door. It took quite a while to get this release prepared, but going forward it should be like much quicker. We continue to aim, I think, for around a 2-week release cadence. So just want to get a quick update on that. That recently was completed after waiting quite some time for it. So anything else anyone wanted to bring up today? Okay, sounds good. Thanks everyone for attending. We'll end early.